The sirens had been wailing for hours, long before the power finally gave out. Houston Memorial's emergency generators coughed, flickered, and surrendered one by one to the rising water that had turned the parking lot into a river of headlights and floating debris. Inside, nurses waded through the ankle-deep chaos, pushing gurneys through hallways that smelled of disinfectant, sweat, and panic. Marcus Leland, RN, stood at the ICU window and watched the water climb the emergency ramp. The storm outside had swallowed the city, and every bolt of lightning illuminated his reflection, tired eyes, soaked scrubs, and a jaw locked in quiet determination. He'd been on shift for 36 hours. The patients came in faster than the ambulances could unload them: heart attacks, near drownings, car crashes, and the fragile ones from the nursing home that had flooded an hour ago. "Marcus, we've got 3 more in triage," shouted Dr. Ortega, her voice slicing through the noise. "Send them to bed 6, 7, and 8. I'll start vitals." He turned, slipped slightly on the slick tile, and caught himself on a crash cart. His shoes squelched with every step, and the monitors blinked erratically as if the machines themselves were afraid. It was chaos, but the kind Marcus thrived in. He had always been the calm in the storm, the one who joked with patients while inserting 4 lines, the one who volunteered for double shifts when others begged for rest. The ICU was his domain, ordered, controlled, predictable. But tonight, nothing was. At 3:17 a.m., the hospital's west wing lost power completely. The flood had reached the lower electrical panels. The intercom crackled once, twice, and died. For a few minutes, all that could be heard was the steady, ghostly chorus of heart monitors and rain hammering the windows. Marcus looked at his watch, then at his phone. No signal. He had one unread message from his landlord: "We need that rent by Friday." Another from a blocked number: "You think you can just disappear? Pay up or we come to your work." He closed his eyes for half a second, forcing the thought away. This was not the time. But as fate would have it, storms have a way of exposing cracks, in buildings and in people. By dawn, the hospital's evacuation began. The Coast Guard had arrived with inflatable boats, shouting orders above the wind. The staff formed human chains, carrying patients through water that now reached their waists. Marcus lifted a teenage boy, unconscious and intubated, his arm muscles burning as he struggled to keep the breathing tube above the surface. "Leland! You're on the last boat," someone called. He didn't answer. He turned back toward the ICU. "One more patient," he told himself. Room 412, Mrs. Kincaid, the elderly woman who had called him Angel every morning. He couldn't leave her behind. When he reached her room, it was half submerged. The fluorescent lights buzzed weakly, reflecting off the rising water. She was still there, eyes wide, clutching her rosary. "Marcus," she whispered. "You came back." "Of course," he said. "We're getting out." He pushed her bed toward the door, straining against the water pressure. Just as he reached the hallway, a loud crack echoed, the sound of glass breaking somewhere below. The hospital shuddered. A wave of cold, muddy water burst through the corridor, knocking over a medicine cart and slamming into his legs. Marcus barely managed to steady the bed against the wall. "Hang on, Mrs. Kincaid." And then, darkness. The last generator gave out. When the lights returned hours later, Marcus Leland was gone. Search teams combed the hospital for days after the flood receded. They found overturned beds, broken equipment, and one empty pair of nurses' clogs near the ICU elevator shaft. The Coast Guard marked the area as structurally unsafe. No body was ever recovered. The last message he sent came at 4:12 a.m. to his colleague, Kara O'Neill. "Don't come looking for me." At first, everyone assumed it was panic, a man trapped in disaster saying something strange under duress. But weeks turned into months. His bank accounts froze, his car remained in the hospital lot, and his apartment was cleared out by the landlord. His sister in Dallas filed a missing persons report that went nowhere. Rumors began to spread, that Marcus had been found by drifters, that he had drowned saving patients, that his body had been misidentified and cremated. But one rumor, whispered only in the break rooms of Houston Memorial, was darker. "Leland wasn't just a nurse," said one orderly. "He was moving stuff, meds, equipment. The kind that goes missing when the books are cooked." Another added, "Maybe he ran because someone found out." Kara O'Neill, the colleague who'd received his final text, refused to believe it. She'd worked beside Marcus for 5 years. He was kind, brilliant, maybe a little secretive, but never crooked. Still, she couldn't ignore the feeling that his disappearance wasn't an accident. On the first anniversary of the flood, she stood in the hospital courtyard during the memorial for lost staff. The names were read aloud. When they said, Marcus Leland, there was a pause, a murmur of disbelief, even then. Because for many, he wasn't gone. He was haunting them, in the gaps of inventory reports, in unclaimed shipments, in the unspoken guilt of those who might have known too much. And though no one said it out loud, they all wondered the same thing. If Marcus Leland had truly drowned that night, who had been using his hospital ID to access restricted medical accounts 2 months later? The floodwaters retreated, but the stench of rot lingered in the walls of Houston Memorial long after the media vans left. What had once been a symbol of modern medicine now stood as a waterlogged ruin, its ICU silent, its corridors stripped of light and purpose. The hospital reopened partially within 6 months, but something invisible hung in the air. Not mold. Not decay. Guilt. Marcus Leland's name was carved into the memorial plaque by the entrance, in honor of those lost in service. Flowers were placed beneath it every year, mostly by nurses who still couldn't believe he was gone. Yet whispers persisted. Kara O'Neill couldn't let go of his final message, "Don't come looking for me." It was too deliberate. Too lucid. Not the words of a man drowning or panicking, the words of someone making a choice. She replayed it in her head for months, until it became an obsession that robbed her of sleep. She filed formal reports, contacted missing persons detectives, even reached out to Marcus's sister, Elaine. None of it brought her closer to the truth. The police wrote it off as accidental death, noting that flood casualties were often unidentifiable. But then came the audit. 3 months after the hospital reopened, a quiet scandal began brewing behind the scenes. The hospital's procurement system had flagged over $480,000 worth of lost medical supplies during the weeks leading up to the flood, 4 pumps, antibiotics, narcotics, even portable ventilators. On paper, everything was signed and accounted for. In practice, nothing was there. And every missing shipment bore the same approving signature. M. Leland. At first, hospital administration dismissed it as data corruption. The flood had wiped half their servers. But then invoices began surfacing in black market clinics along the Gulf. Their lot numbers matched Houston Memorial's missing stock. The FBI's healthcare fraud unit paid a visit, brief and discreet. They questioned staff quietly, avoiding headlines. A few people were asked to hand over their work phones. Most cooperated, except one, the hospital's supply chain coordinator, who resigned abruptly and moved to Florida. Still, there was no proof that Marcus had anything to do with it. His signature could have been forged. His login credentials could have been stolen. But Kara couldn't ignore the irony. Marcus had vanished the very week the investigation began. On a humid June afternoon, Kara sat in her car outside the rebuilt West Wing, staring at the plaque again. In honor of those lost in service. She imagined Marcus standing there, water up to his knees, shouting orders, saving lives, the version of him everyone wanted to believe in. But behind that, there was something else she remembered now, the quiet way he'd avoid questions about money, the way his hands trembled slightly when payroll was late. He'd once told her, half joking, "You don't get rich being a nurse unless you start selling kidneys." She'd laughed then. Now it didn't sound like a joke. A knock on her window made her jump. It was Dr. Ortega, the ER attending who'd worked alongside Marcus that night. "You still visiting the ghost?" Ortega asked, her tone dry but not unkind. "Maybe I'm just looking for closure," Kara said. "Closure's overrated. You'll drive yourself mad trying to make sense of a flood." Kara hesitated. "Do you ever think he might still be alive?" Ortega's eyes narrowed. "I think if he were, he'd have called someone by now. People don't just vanish unless they want to." The doctor turned and walked away before Kara could respond. But as Ortega left, Kara noticed something she hadn't seen before, a tattoo peeking from beneath her sleeve. A small, simple line of numbers, 412. Marcus's last patient room number. Weeks later, Kara was called into HR for a routine compliance interview. The man across from her, Mr. Daniel, a thin-lipped administrator with a too-perfect smile, closed the blinds before speaking. "We're just cleaning up old files," he said. "Anything you can recall about Nurse Leland's last shift?" Kara frowned. "Not much you don't already know. He stayed behind during the evacuation. He was helping Mrs. Kincaid." "Why?" Daniel leaned back. "We've had irregularities in the insurance claims related to the flood. Duplicate reimbursements, missing serial numbers. Some of the documentation uses his credentials." "So you think he forged them?" He smiled faintly. "I didn't say that. I said someone did." Kara felt the air shift. "And you think I might know who?" "Ms. O'Neill, you were the last person he texted. Surely he said something before that?" She shook her head. "Nothing except the message." Daniel nodded, made a note, and closed his folder. "That'll be all." But as Kara reached the door, he added quietly, "Between you and me, it's better for everyone if we let the dead stay dead." That night, unable to sleep, Kara poured herself a drink and opened her laptop. She accessed the hospital's online database, what remained of it after the flood. Most files were gone, corrupted, or wiped clean. But when she searched M. Leland, one entry stood out, a requisition form dated August 28, 2017, 2 days after Marcus's presumed death. The item? A shipment of antibiotics and trauma kits. The destination? St. Solace Medical Camp, Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Kara stared at the screen. The camp was real, she'd heard about it through a charity drive years ago. But what was a dead man's ID doing authorizing shipments to a foreign aid mission? Her phone buzzed just then, an unknown number, blocked caller ID. She hesitated, then answered. A low, calm voice said, "You should stop digging, Ms. O'Neill." He wanted to stay gone for a reason. Click. The line went dead. The next morning, she went to the police. The detective on duty, a man named Ruiz, listened patiently, then exhaled through his nose. "Look, I'll put it this way," he said. "We've had at least 3 tips over the years claiming Marcus was seen alive. Florida, Belize, even Louisiana. Every one turned out false. Unless you've got proof he's in Haiti, there's nothing we can do. But his login. Could be anyone. Could be someone using his credentials. Happens all the time. Unless we find Marcus himself, it's just a ghost in the system." A ghost in the system. That phrase haunted her. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus hadn't died in that flood, he'd used it. A perfect cover, an eraser of records and debts and guilt. But what kind of man would abandon everything, fake his death, and vanish into the storm? Across the ocean, in a humid tented clinic outside Port-au-Prince, a man with a beard and sunburned skin sterilized a set of scalpels. His Haitian assistant called him Dr. Merrick. He spoke fluent Creole now, smiled easily, and treated the poorest of the poor without ever asking for payment. When he passed a cracked mirror, he didn't look at it for long. Because the man staring back was not Dr. Merrick. It was Marcus Leland. And he knew, one day, someone would come looking after all. It began with a clerical error. Or at least, that's what the hospital called it. 8 years after the flood, Houston Memorial had long rebranded itself as Memorial Horizon Medical Center, sleeker logo, new board, new policies. The old days of the flood were spoken of only in documentaries and whispered rumors. Yet, beneath the polished image, the ghosts of 2017 still lingered in the archives, encrypted in outdated databases and unclosed audits. Kara O'Neill was no longer a bedside nurse. She'd left Houston Memorial 3 years after Marcus's disappearance, burned out and disillusioned. Now she worked for a medical NGO that handled disaster relief shipments, the kind that sent donated antibiotics and supplies to struggling clinics overseas. Irony, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. It was late January 2025 when Kara noticed it, a series of invoices from St. Solace Medical Camp, Haiti. The sender email was familiar. Not the address itself, that was encrypted through a non-profit domain, but the way it was written. Marcus had a habit of signing off every email with 2 dots instead of 1. "Thank you. Best regards." Confirmed. No one else did that. Not then. Not now. Her fingers froze on the keyboard. The signature at the bottom read, M. Leland, Clinic Director. For a moment she thought it was a sick joke, a recycled name, some random Haitian doctor using an alias. But the timestamps aligned too neatly, medical orders placed precisely every 6 months, always from the same camp, always with the same peculiar handwriting in the attached PDFs. She leaned back, heart-thudding. Could it really be him? To anyone else, Marcus Leland was a myth, the ICU ghost, the flood martyr, the man whose name appeared in half the hospital's conspiracy theories. But to Kara, he had always been unfinished business. She opened her old email archives, the ones she'd never been able to delete. There it was, his last message. "Don't come looking for me." She exhaled slowly. "Too late, Marcus," she whispered. Within hours, she booked a ticket to Port-au-Prince. Officially, she was going as part of a supply verification trip. Unofficially, she was chasing a ghost. The air in Haiti was thick with humidity and the metallic smell of diesel. Kara stepped off the plane and into a rush of noise, porters, vendors, volunteers, all moving in an organized chaos. She hired a driver to take her to the outskirts of Croix de Bouquets, where the St. Solace camp was located. The road was rough, carved between sugarcane fields and clusters of tin roof houses. The driver, a man named Lucien, glanced at her NGO badge. "First time in Haiti?" he asked. "First time in 8 years," she replied, staring out the window. "St. Solace, good people there. The doctor, he helped many." "What's his name?" Lucien shrugged. "We call him Dr. Merrick. Maybe from Europe. Very private man. But he saved lives." Kara's pulse quickened. "Merrick," she repeated softly. The driver smiled. "Yes. Dr. Merrick. You meet him, you will see, he is kind. But he hides something, I think. His eyes, they look haunted." The camp was nothing like the sterile hospitals Kara was used to. It was a patchwork of tents, cinderblock huts, and tarps strung between trees. Children played barefoot near water barrels. A generator coughed somewhere behind the main tent, where a faded sign read St. Solace Free Clinic, Hope Lives Here. Inside, the heat was stifling. A woman with tired eyes sat behind a desk, logging patient names by hand. Kara showed her badge. "I'm here to audit incoming medical shipments," she said smoothly. The woman nodded, motioning toward the back. "You talk to Dr. Merrick. He handles all supplies." Kara's throat went dry. She followed the narrow corridor of canvas until she reached a makeshift office, a wooden table, stacks of paperwork, and a man standing by the window, sleeves rolled up, sunlight cutting across his face. He turned when he heard her footsteps. For a moment, the world stopped. Older. Thinner. His hair was streaked with gray, and his beard was trimmed close, but the eyes, those unmistakable eyes, were the same. Steady, deep-set, haunted. Marcus Leland. Alive. He froze too, recognition flashing before he masked it with a practiced calm. "Can I help you?" he asked in accented English. Kara almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of the moment was overwhelming. "It's me," she whispered. "Kara. From Houston Memorial." His expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around the clipboard. "You have the wrong person," he said evenly. "Marcus, don't do that," she said softly. "You sent me that message, remember? Don't come looking for me." A long silence. The hum of flies. The distant chatter of patients. Finally, he sighed and set the clipboard down. "You shouldn't have come." They sat in silence for several minutes before he spoke again, his voice lower now, stripped of the fake accent. "I told you to let it go. You were supposed to move on." "I did," Kara said. "Until I saw your name on supply manifests. You've been here this whole time, pretending to be dead." He looked away, out toward the camp. "Pretending," he murmured. "No. I was dead. Marcus Leland died in that flood. The man you see now, he's just what's left." Kara's voice shook. "You faked your death, Marcus. Why? You had people who cared about you. You could have." "I couldn't," he interrupted sharply. "You don't understand. They would have killed me." She stared. "Who?" He hesitated, then gave a hollow laugh. "Who do you think? The people I owed, the ones who made me steal from the hospital. It started with debt, medical bills for my sister, student loans, whatever excuse I told myself. But it turned into something else. I started moving supplies for them, expensive ones. Portable ventilators, antibiotics, even narcotics. At first, I thought it was just gray market stuff. Then I found out they were reselling them through fake disaster relief operations. Millions of dollars worth. And when I tried to stop, they threatened you. He nodded slowly. They said they'd make me disappear. So I beat them to it. Kara felt her chest tighten. You used the flood. He nodded. The perfect cover. Total chaos. Bodies lost, files destroyed. I stayed behind on purpose. Slipped out through the maintenance tunnels, used a rescue boat, and by the time anyone noticed, I was gone. Her hands trembled. You could have told me. I couldn't risk it. You were on the staff list. They watched everyone. I left a message because, well, I didn't know if I'd ever get another chance. Kara swallowed hard. And the clinic? Haiti? Marcus managed a faint smile. Irony, I guess. I used the same supply channels they built for their laundering scheme, but for real relief work this time. It's the only thing that keeps me from losing my mind. Before she could respond, a shadow appeared at the tent entrance. A man in a gray shirt, American, wearing sunglasses even indoors. He nodded curtly at Marcus. Dr. Merrick, the man said. Supplies from Port-au-Prince are here. Need your signature. Marcus froze. The voice was too familiar. Kara recognized it instantly, from that blocked call 8 years ago. The man left without another word, but the message was clear. They know you're here, Kara whispered. Marcus's face paled. Then it's already started. That night, as the camp settled under the hum of generators, Kara sat outside her tent, unable to sleep. From across the compound, she could see Marcus moving in the dim light, speaking quietly with locals, his expression tense. She realized this wasn't just a story about a man escaping guilt, it was about a man still trapped in it. Some ghosts never stopped haunting. And Marcus Leland wasn't done running yet. The next morning broke over St. Solace Clinic like a slow confession, a pale sun over rust-colored earth, the smell of smoke and antiseptic mingling in the air. Roosters crowed somewhere in the distance, and children laughed, chasing an empty four-bag like a balloon. Kara O'Neill hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's face, the same eyes that once glowed under fluorescent hospital lights, now shadowed and wary. She replayed his words again and again. They said they'd make me disappear. So I beat them to it. That wasn't cowardice. That was survival. But still, he'd let the world bury him alive, and let her believe it. Marcus appeared at dawn, wearing faded scrubs and a fraying baseball cap. He carried a tray of medical charts under one arm, moving through the camp with an ease that came from routine. The locals adored him. Children waved, patients blessed him. But Kara saw the strain in his movements, the way his gaze lingered on every new vehicle that approached, the way he scanned faces just a second too long. He wasn't living. He was hiding in plain sight. When he noticed her waiting near the water barrels, he sighed, resigned. You're still here, he said quietly. Of course I'm still here, she replied. You vanish for 8 years, fake your death, and expect me to just hop back on a plane? I expected you to listen, he said. That man yesterday, the one who brought the shipment, he's part of the same group that blackmailed me. They know who I am, or at least they suspect. If you're seen with me, you'll be next. Kara crossed her arms. You've been sending supply requests to our NGO under your real initials. If they're tracking, you've already exposed yourself. He winced. Old habits. I never thought anyone would notice. She laughed dryly. You clearly underestimated how good I am at finding dead men. They walked along the edge of the camp, where a narrow trail wound into the hills. The air was cooler there, quiet except for the rustle of palm leaves. I thought you'd hate me, Marcus said finally. I did, Kara admitted. For a long time. You made me question everything I knew about you, about honesty, about loyalty. But standing here now, I just feel sorry. For me. For all of it, she said. For what they did to you. For what you did to yourself. He gave a small, humorless chuckle. Don't waste pity on me. I made my choices. Maybe, she said softly. But maybe it's time you stop running from them. He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment, the walls around him cracked. And go where, Kara? Back to the people who think I'm dead? Back to the FBI who'd love to pin a multi-million-dollar theft on me? I'm a ghost because it's the only way I get to keep helping people. Helping them doesn't mean hiding, she said. If you're really innocent, then tell the truth. His eyes hardened. You think the truth saved anyone back in Houston? They reached a ridge overlooking the valley, tin roofs glinting in the sun, the blue canvas of aid tents stretching to the horizon. It was breathtaking and tragic all at once, a kingdom built on mercy and secrecy. Marcus spoke after a long silence. After I disappeared, I spent 2 years drifting. Belize. Nicaragua. I worked under fake names, patching up fishermen, delivering babies, doing what I could. Then I met a man who called himself Father Solace. He was running this camp, or pretending to. He said he could get me papers, a clean identity, if I agreed to help move medical supplies. Kara frowned. So you were still smuggling? At first, yes. But then I realized something, the shipments were real. The medicine actually reached people. It was the first time in years I felt useful again. When Father Solace died, I took over the clinic. I turned their laundering pipeline into something good. The money kept flowing, but instead of disappearing into offshore accounts, it paid for generators, vaccines, surgeries. I became their invisible asset, the man who kept everything clean on paper. Kara hesitated. So you're laundering good deeds through dirty money? He smiled bitterly. Redemption's rarely pure, Kara. A commotion near the main tent interrupted them. 2 local nurses were arguing with a man in uniform, Haitian police, armed and sweating in the heat. Marcus's face went pale. What's happening? Kara asked. He grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a tent. It's them. They've tipped off the police. Why would they? To remind me who owns my freedom. He peeked around the corner as the officer barked questions at the staff. They'll say they're checking permits, but they're looking for me. Every few months they do this. A message to stay quiet. Quiet about what? The shipments, he said. They're not just moving medicine anymore. They've gone bigger, body parts, prescription opioids, fake relief grants. They've built an empire on disaster. Kara's stomach turned. And you're sitting in the middle of it. I'm keeping it from killing more people, he said. If I walk away, the clinic dies with me. If I talk, they'll burn it to the ground. That evening, Marcus paced inside his tent, sweat glistening on his forehead. The police had left after inspection, but the message was clear, someone had informed them he was compromised. Kara sat across from him, watching as he packed documents into a weathered satchel, manifests, donor receipts, proof of shipments. What are you doing? He didn't answer immediately. You're right, he said finally. I can't keep living like this. They've started using the same ID channels I once used to cover their tracks. They're making it look like I'm still part of the ring. So you'll expose them? He nodded. But I need evidence. And protection. Kara leaned forward. I can help you. Our NGO has ties with Interpol and the U.S. consulate. We can get you immunity if you testify. He looked up sharply. You'd risk that? For me? She met his eyes. For justice. And maybe, foreclosure. The next day, Kara went into Port-au-Prince under the pretense of coordinating a shipment. Marcus gave her a USB drive, encrypted files that mapped the entire black market network, shell companies, false invoices, money transfers linked to medical suppliers back in Houston. As she left, he said quietly, if they find me before you come back, tell them I didn't run this time. That night, rain began to fall, soft at first, then hard, drumming against the clinic roofs. Kara's convoy got stuck halfway to the capital. She tried calling Marcus, but there was no signal. By morning, the news broke, St. Solace Clinic burned down overnight. Initial reports claimed it was an accident, a generator explosion. But witnesses told another story, armed men on motorcycles, no plates, seen fleeing into the jungle. And among the ashes, no trace of Dr. Merrick was found. For 3 days, Kara scoured hospitals and refugee camps, asking every survivor if they'd seen him. Nothing. It was déjà vu, another disaster, another disappearance. Until the 4th day. At the airport, as she prepared to fly home, a man approached her. Haitian, middle-aged, carrying a sealed envelope. From the doctor, he said simply. Inside was a single note written in neat, familiar handwriting. Don't mourn me this time. I'm coming home. The envelope lay in Kara's lap the entire flight back to Houston. She turned it over again and again, as if the truth might spill out through the seams. Don't mourn me this time. I'm coming home. The handwriting was unmistakable, the same steady, slanted cursive that once signed discharge reports, patient charts, and countless requisition forms. Marcus Leland was alive again, for the second time. Only this time, she wasn't sure he'd survive what waited for him in the world he'd abandoned. When Kara landed, Houston was colder than she remembered, not in temperature, but in temperament. The city had grown harder, sleeker, rebuilt in glass and cynicism. The hospital he once called home now stood 15 stories high, its new name gleaming over the main entrance, Memorial Horizon Medical Center. She sat in her car across the street, watching nurses in navy scrubs rush in and out, oblivious to the ghosts beneath their feet. Somewhere in the administrative wing were the records that could destroy, or vindicate, Marcus. She had promised him she would get help. But before she could trust anyone, she needed to know who she was up against. That night, she used her old ID badge, expired but still magnetically active, to access the staff entrance. The security guard barely looked up. Hospitals, after all, were places where people came and went at all hours, unseen. Inside, the sterile hum of fluorescent lights greeted her like an old enemy. She walked down the corridor toward the archives room, where flood-era files were stored on microfilm and digital backups. She typed Leland, Marcus into the search bar. The screen populated instantly. Personnel file, terminated, deceased, 2017. Procurement logs, missing inventory audit, 2017. FBI healthcare fraud inquiry, sealed, 2018. But below that, one more entry blinked. Medical Licensing Board, reinstatement inquiry, 2024. Kara's pulse quickened. Someone had tried to reinstate his license 8 years after his death. She opened the document. The applicant's name was Merrick Elv Jensen. Same date of birth. Same nursing credentials. Attached was a scanned passport photo, heavily bearded, with rounder features and darker skin tone, but the eyes were unmistakable. Marcus had already started rebuilding his life, even before she found him. The next morning, Kara contacted Special Agent Daniel Rios, a federal investigator who'd worked the hospital fraud case years ago. They met at a diner off Westheimer, the kind of place where secrets felt safe in the smell of burnt coffee. Rios was older now, heavier around the eyes, but sharp as ever. He listened as she told him everything: the clinic, the smuggling ring, the explosion. When she slid the USB drive across the table, his jaw tightened. "Do you have any idea what's on this?" he asked. "I know it connects Houston Memorial's old procurement system to offshore accounts and fake relief operations. And I know Marcus Leland was caught in the middle." Rios sighed. "Caught or complicit?" Kara didn't flinch. "He's trying to make it right. He wants to testify." Rios rubbed his temple. "You realize he's a fugitive, right? Faked his death, fraud, destruction of evidence. He'd be lucky to see daylight again." "Then get him immunity," she said firmly. "Because if he comes forward, he can bring down everyone behind this. The same people who've kept this running for nearly a decade." Rios stared at her, then at the USB drive. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right. If he contacts you again, tell him to come in quietly. If what you're saying is true, he might walk out of this alive. But only if he brings proof." Kara exhaled in relief. "He already has." 3 days later, Marcus did contact her. The message came through a secure app, no return number, no traceable IP. "Marcus, it's time. Meet me where the city still remembers the water." It took her a moment to understand. The Flood Memorial Park. Built where the old hospital parking lot had once been submerged under 10 feet of water. She arrived at sunset, the air cool and still. The park was eerily quiet, pools reflecting bronze statues of first responders, engraved names gleaming under soft light. Among them, Marcus Leland, RN. And there he was, standing before his own name. Older, thinner, but no longer hiding behind false accents or shadows. He looked like a man carrying the weight of every secret he'd ever told. "You made it," Kara said. "I almost didn't," he replied. "They followed me from Port-au-Prince to Miami. I had to switch flights twice. Are you safe now?" He gave a hollow laugh. "Safe? Kara, I'm standing in front of my own gravestone." They walked along the path that wound through the park. Marcus handed her a second envelope, this one thick, sealed with medical tape. "What's this?" "Everything," he said. Emails, contracts, payment receipts. The whole network. They used a fake nonprofit called Global Aid Nexus to launder millions in stolen hospital supplies through disaster zones. The same people who funded the Port-au-Prince clinic setup. They killed Father Salas when he tried to expose it. Kara frowned. Who are they, exactly? Marcus hesitated. Administrators. Suppliers. Some doctors. And, he looked directly at her, Ortega. Kara's heart dropped. Dr. Ortega? She was one of us. She was more than that, Marcus said quietly. She ran the logistics side. She's the one who got me involved. Said it was harmless, just rerouting extra supplies to where they were needed most. But when I tried to back out, she reminded me about my debts. About my sister's unpaid surgery bill. Said she could make it all go away if I played along. Kara's voice trembled. And when you didn't? He looked away. She sent 2 men to my apartment. That's when I knew I had to disappear. The flood gave me the perfect exit. As dusk deepened, Marcus's face softened. You know the irony? I actually did save Mrs. Kincaid that night. Got her out through a service tunnel. After that, I used the same tunnel to get out myself. They declared me dead before sunrise. Kara shook her head, half in awe, half in disbelief. You faked your death to escape a monster, and now you're walking right back into its mouth. He smiled faintly. Maybe redemption's worth the risk. Then his tone darkened. But Ortega won't go quietly. She's too smart. Too connected. If she finds out I'm alive, she'll come for both of us. Kara's phone buzzed before she could respond. A text from an unknown number. He's not the only ghost who came back. She looked up sharply. Marcus, we have to go. Now. They barely made it to her car when headlights flared from across the park. A black SUV rolled forward, tinted windows glinting. Marcus froze. From the driver's side stepped Dr. Elena Ortega, calm and immaculate, her hair pulled back, her lab coat replaced by a tailored gray jacket. She looked nothing like the woman who once led code blues and barked orders in chaos, but everything like someone who'd learned to survive by controlling others. Hello, Marcus, she said coolly. You've caused quite the mess. He stepped in front of Kara instinctively. It's over, Elena. I have everything, names, accounts, transfers. You can't bury this anymore. She smiled, slow and dangerous. Oh, Marcus. You think anyone cares? The ring has grown bigger than you can imagine. You were just a pawn. A good one, until you got sentimental. Kara pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over Rios's number. Ortega noticed. Ah, the loyal nurse, she said. Always cleaning up after someone else's mess. Then she turned to Marcus, eyes cold. You should have stayed dead. Before Kara could react, Ortega raised a small remote device and clicked. Behind them, Marcus's old gravestone erupted in a flash of fire, not large, but loud enough to scatter the few bystanders nearby. A diversion. In the chaos, Ortega slipped back into the SUV. The car sped away, vanishing into the Houston night. Marcus grabbed Kara's hand. We have to go. Now. They ran toward the river path, hearts pounding. Behind them, sirens wailed. For a moment, under the glow of streetlights, Kara caught a glimpse of Marcus's face, not of a fugitive or a ghost, but of a man finally ready to stop running. Let's end this, he said. And this time, she believed him. The hotel room smelled faintly of bleach and burnt coffee, the anonymous kind of place meant for people who didn't want to be found. Marcus sat by the window, curtains drawn, watching the neon sign outside flicker like a pulse. Kara paced behind him, phone in hand, whispering urgently into the receiver. Yes, Agent Rios. I've got him. He's alive, and he's ready to talk. Marcus turned his head slightly, listening. He could tell from her tone that Rios wasn't thrilled. The FBI liked tidy stories, not resurrected nurses with decade-old scandals. Kara hung up and exhaled. He's sending a team. But he says it has to be quiet, no press, no leaks. You'll meet in a secured federal office tomorrow. Marcus nodded slowly. Tomorrow, he repeated, like a man testing the weight of the word. That night, neither of them slept. Marcus kept seeing Ortega's face, the calm smile, the click of that small remote detonator, the brief flare that had burned away his gravestone. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. Ortega had destroyed the ghost he'd become, forcing him back into the light. And the light had always been dangerous. He reached into his duffel bag and pulled out the envelope he'd given Kara earlier. Inside were papers, photocopies, receipts, export forms, and a small black flash drive. He turned it over in his hand, the surface worn smooth from years of hiding. On it was everything: the shipments of morphine, the phantom patients, the off-book transactions that tied Houston Memorial's procurement system to global aid nexus. Each document was a confession. Kara watched him from the edge of the bed. "You're doing the right thing, you know." He smiled without humor. "Funny. The last time I heard that, it cost me my life." Morning came gray and wet, the kind of Texas drizzle that couldn't decide whether to fall or float. They drove downtown in silence, the city rolling past like a memory half erased. Marcus wore a plain jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. Kara kept glancing in the mirror, half expecting another black SUV to appear behind them. At 9:45 a.m., they pulled into the underground lot of a federal annex building. Agent Rios met them at the elevator, clipboard in hand. His expression was grim but respectful. "Mr. Leland," he said evenly. "Or should I say Mr. Jensen?" Marcus gave a tired shrug. "Marcus will do." They rode the elevator up to the 12th floor, where a small interview room waited, windowless, fluorescent lit, and sterile enough to make a nurse nostalgic. Rios motioned for Marcus to sit. "Before we begin, you understand you're not under arrest yet," Rios said, setting down a folder. "But the charges you're potentially facing are serious: fraud, falsification of records, obstruction. However," he looked Marcus squarely in the eye, "if your information leads to conviction of higher-level perpetrators, the U.S. Attorney's Office will recommend full immunity." Marcus nodded. "That's all I need." He placed the flash drive on the table. Rios raised a brow. "That it?" "That's the heart of it," Marcus said. "But there's more off-site. A safety deposit box, Haitian branch of Credit Sud. Files, transfers, signed authorizations. I can get them for you, but only if you guarantee protection for Kara. Ortega knows she's involved now." Rios looked between them, then leaned back in his chair. "You've got my word. But we'll need Ortega alive, too. No case without her." Marcus hesitated, then said quietly, "Then you'd better move fast. Ortega doesn't leave loose ends." By evening, Rios's team had already begun cross-referencing the files. What they found was staggering. $48 million in stolen medical supplies redirected through false relief operations. 6 registered shell companies tied to Houston Memorial's procurement division. 4 licensed physicians listed as consultants, including Dr. Elena Ortega. But the most shocking discovery came later that night, an encrypted email chain dated April 2025, 2 months before Marcus resurfaced. The sender, e.ortega@memorialhorizon.org. The recipient, j.rios@ustoge.gov. Rios's own name. Kara's stomach dropped as she read the subject line, "Still waiting for confirmation of your cooperation." Rios looked pale. "That's not possible," he muttered. "Someone spoofed my credentials." Marcus's eyes narrowed. Or maybe someone didn't. The room fell silent. 2 hours later, Marcus and Kara were moved to a different safe house. The official explanation was security protocol, but the unspoken truth was simpler: no one knew who to trust. They sat at a small table in the dim light, eating takeout noodles that had long gone cold. "I don't think it's just Ortega anymore," Kara said softly. "If she had someone in the bureau?" "She has everyone," Marcus interrupted. "Hospitals, charities, logistics companies, they all wash their hands in the same water. And Rios, maybe he dipped his in too." He ran a hand through his hair. "You know what's ironic? I joined nursing because I thought saving lives made me clean. Turns out, even angels in scrubs have dirty hands." Kara gave him a sad smile. "Maybe redemption isn't about being clean. Maybe it's about not hiding the mess." Marcus chuckled quietly. "That's profound for someone running from federal witnesses." "Occupational hazard," she replied. For the first time in days, he laughed, genuinely, freely. But beneath it, fear coiled tight in his chest. At midnight, the safe house phone rang. Rios's voice came through the line, low and urgent. "Marcus, listen carefully. We have movement on Ortega. She boarded a private flight an hour ago, bound for Monterrey, Mexico. We're coordinating with customs to intercept her. Stay put until you hear from me. Rios, Marcus said slowly, how did you know where she was? A pause. Then, let's just say your files open the right doors. The line went dead. Marcus looked at Kara. Something's off. Before she could answer, the lights flickered, once, twice, then went out. The hum of the refrigerator died. The room fell into total darkness. A second later, glass shattered in the kitchen. Kara gasped. Marcus grabbed her arm and yanked her to the floor just as a silenced bullet struck the wall where her head had been. Another shot, closer this time. Stay down. Marcus hissed. He crawled toward the back door, heart hammering. The rain outside masked their movements, but the footsteps inside the house were methodical, 2 of them, moving in sync. Professionals. Marcus spotted the faint glow of a phone screen across the room, Kara's phone, lying face down. It buzzed once more. The text preview flashed just long enough for him to read it. From Dr. Ortega. Message, you should have stayed in the water. Marcus shoved Kara through the back door into the rain. They stumbled into the alley, soaked and shivering. Behind them, the house lit up, not in fire this time, but in flashing red and blue. Sirens. They turned the corner just in time to see Rio step out of an unmarked SUV, flanked by agents. His face was unreadable. Get them, he ordered. Kara froze. Marcus. I know, he said quietly. Run. They darted into the maze of alleyways, headlights cutting across puddles like searchlights. Somewhere behind them, Rios shouted into a radio. The rain poured harder, washing the city in silver. For the first time since the flood, Marcus Leland felt the same terror he had that night, the water rising, the world collapsing, every heartbeat an act of defiance. Only now, the flood wasn't water. It was power, corruption, and silence. And he was done drowning. Rain blurred the city into streaks of light and shadow as Marcus and Kara sprinted through the back alleys of downtown Houston. The sound of sirens echoed off the brick walls, distorted and multiplying like a chase through a nightmare. Behind them, engines roared, the Bureau, or whoever was pretending to be. Kara's lungs burned. Where are we going? Marcus didn't slow. Somewhere the living never look, he said. They ducked into a narrow passage between 2 abandoned warehouses, splashing through puddles that smelled faintly of oil. Marcus stopped at a rusted door with a faded sign that read Houston Memorial Storage Unit B7. The flood archives, Kara whispered. They were supposed to demolish this years ago. Exactly, he said. No one comes here anymore. He kicked the door open, and the 2 of them slipped inside. The place smelled of mildew and dust, walls lined with old patient files, 4 poles, and boxes of yellowing paper marked, disaster inventory. Marcus locked the door behind them, then lit a small emergency lantern. The pale glow revealed a maze of forgotten history. This is where it started, he said quietly. Every stolen shipment, every doctored report. They staged the first transfers from this facility during the 2017 flood relief. Ortega called it reallocation. I called it theft. She called me naive. Kara moved closer. What are we looking for? Proof that this ring didn't end with her. I kept copies here, real ones. Hard drives they couldn't trace. He pried open a metal cabinet and pulled out an old desktop tower, the kind obsolete even in 2017. He wiped off the dust, plugged in a portable power pack, and hit the switch. The screen flickered. A login prompt appeared. Marcus typed a password. The desktop came to life, icons filling the screen like ghosts returning to speak. There, Kara said, pointing. Procurement_logs_2017. Marcus clicked it open. Rows of data appeared, shipment IDs, routing numbers, delivery manifests, all marked delivered, Global Aid Nexus, Houston Division. But one file at the bottom stood out. Recipient, DOJ Internal Affairs. Date, March 2025. Status, received. Kara frowned. That's this year. How? The monitor froze. Then lines of red text began scrolling across the screen. Access restricted, system override. User, D.Rios. The computer shut itself off. Kara's voice trembled. He's in the system. Marcus slammed his fist on the desk. He's been in it the whole time. Rios wasn't corrupted, he was coordinating with them. The entire immunity deal was bait. They wanted the files back. Kara stared at him, wide-eyed. So what now? Marcus turned to her slowly. Now we ghost them back. Using the offline backup, Marcus began transferring the encrypted files onto a clean flash drive. His fingers moved fast, confident, the precision of a trauma nurse repurposed into digital surgery. If we can upload this somewhere public, he said, they can't bury it again. Kara nodded. Media outlets? Too slow. They'll be silenced before it airs. Then where? He paused, then smiled faintly. The one place no one can scrub fast enough, the medical licensing registry. Every active healthcare worker in the country checks that database daily. If we embed the data inside the registry's open access reports, it'll go viral in hours. Kara blinked. Marcus, that's brilliant. He shrugged. Desperate times call for unconventional charting. But just as the file transfer hit 78%, a loud metallic bang echoed from the far end of the warehouse. Kara froze. They found us. Marcus yanked the drive out and shoved it into his jacket pocket. Back door. They darted between shelves, past crates of old monitors and oxygen tanks. Another crash, this one closer. A voice echoed through the darkness. Marcus Leland. Federal agents. Step out now. Rios. Kara's heart thudded. He's here. Marcus whispered, he's not arresting us, he's hunting us. A flashlight beam swept across the corridor. They ducked behind a row of filing cabinets, holding their breath. Rios's voice came again, calmer now, almost pitying. You should have stayed hidden, Marcus. We could have kept you safe. Now you've made it messy. Marcus stepped out slowly, hands raised. And what's your definition of safe, Agent Rios? Being your scapegoat again? Rios's expression was unreadable. Rainwater dripped from his coat. You think this was personal? I kept the peace. Ortega paid us to move supplies that were saving lives. You think the government cared where they came from? We kept people alive. That's what you wanted, isn't it? By stealing from those who needed it first? Marcus shot back. You didn't save lives. You sold them. Rios sighed. I really didn't want to do this. He reached inside his coat. Before he could draw his weapon, a deafening crack split the air. Rios jerked, stumbled forward, and fell. Behind him stood Dr. Ortega, gun in hand, expression icy. You talk too much, Daniel, she said softly. Kara gasped, backing away. Marcus froze, torn between fury and disbelief. Ortega stepped closer, the barrel of the gun lowering slightly. You've always been sentimental, Marcus, she said. You could have lived quietly. The clinic, the new name, it was perfect. But you had to come back. Marcus glared at her. You killed Solace. You killed your own people. I preserved order, Ortega replied evenly. Do you know what chaos costs? Do you know how many lives crumble when people like us stop managing the flow? Kara spat, you mean the flow of stolen morphine and blood bags? Ortega's lips twitched. You still don't understand. Every disaster needs balance. We provided it, selectively. Marcus stepped forward, defiant. You can rationalize it however you want, but this ends tonight. Then you'll need to pull the trigger, Marcus, she said, tossing the gun at his feet. Because I won't. I don't kill ghosts twice. For a long moment, they stared at each other, predator and prey, guilt and redemption staring across the same moral line. Marcus bent, picked up the gun, and held it steady. The same hands that once steadied dying hearts now trembled at the edge of vengeance. You don't deserve a bullet, he said finally. You deserve exposure. He turned, grabbed Kara's wrist, and bolted toward the back exit. Behind them, Ortega's voice rang out, calm, cutting. Then I'll bury you in headlines, Marcus. Again. They burst out into the rain-soaked night. Marcus pulled out the flash drive, shielding it from the downpour. Kara's car waited 2 blocks away. As they sped through downtown, Marcus connected the drive to Kara's laptop. The transfer finished before we ran, he said breathlessly. We can still upload it. She nodded. Registry servers mirror every 6 hours. We've got 1 minute before the next cycle. Marcus's fingers flew over the keyboard. Then let's make it count. The upload bar crawled forward agonizingly slow. 68%. 84%. 99%. Then, complete. He leaned back, drenched in relief. It's out there. Unstoppable now. Kara smiled weakly. You did it. But Marcus didn't smile. He was staring out the windshield. A black SUV had just turned the corner, accelerating fast. Ortega. The collision was sudden, brutal, metallic. The world spun. Glass shattered. Airbags exploded in blinding white. When Marcus came to, he was hanging sideways in the wreck, dazed but alive. Kara moaned beside him, bleeding from her forehead but conscious. Through the spiderweb cracks of the windshield, he saw Ortega step out of the SUV, limping but unbroken. She raised her gun again, pointing it directly at the wrecked car. Marcus whispered hoarsely, "Stay down." Then, in the distance, sirens. Real ones this time. Dozens of them. Ortega froze, lowering her weapon slightly. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen, and her face drained of color. Marcus managed a weak smile. "You're trending. On every major network, every hospital feed, every official registry. Breaking, Houston medical relief fraud scandal exposed, internal leaks reveal FBI, hospital administrators involved." Ortega looked up at him, eyes full of venom. Then, without another word, she dropped the gun and fled into the rain. Paramedics arrived minutes later. Kara was loaded onto a stretcher. Marcus sat on the curb, wrapped in a blanket, watching the chaos unfold like a man seeing his past burn clean. An officer approached. "Sir, we're going to need your statement." Marcus nodded absently. "You'll have it all soon. Every ghost deserves a record." And as dawn crept across Houston, the city that had once swallowed him whole now whispered his name again, not as a fugitive, but as the man who refused to stay buried. Houston awoke to a storm of headlines. By sunrise, the city was buzzing, hospital administrators were being escorted out of offices in handcuffs, federal agents raided the Memorial Horizon Procurement Department, and reporters camped outside the courthouse demanding answers. The ICU ghost returns, nurse exposes billion-dollar medical fraud ring. Hero or traitor? Marcus Leland's shocking reappearance rocks healthcare industry. The world had caught fire, and Marcus Leland was standing right in the middle of it. He sat in a sterile hospital room, wrist wrapped in bandages, a bruise darkening across his jaw. Kara lay in the next bed, hooked up to 4 fluids but awake. The steady beep of the monitor filled the silence between them. "You know," she murmured, "this is the first time you've been in a hospital bed instead of next to one." Marcus smirked faintly. "Feels wrong. I keep wanting to check my own vitals." "Your heart rate's high," she teased weakly. He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. The weight of what he'd done, what he'd exposed, hung heavy in the air. The door opened, and Agent Rios stepped in. His arm was in a sling, a bullet graze from Ortega's betrayal. He looked exhausted but sincere. "Leland," he said quietly. "You've caused quite the stir." Marcus didn't reply. Rios sighed. "The files went viral faster than we could contain them. The DOJ is moving to indict Ortega and 7 others tied to Global Aid Nexus. The Bureau's internal affairs is cleaning house. And as for you," he opened a folder. "The U.S. Attorney's Office is granting full immunity in exchange for your cooperation. No charges. No jail time." Kara exhaled in relief. Marcus blinked. "Immunity," he repeated softly. "After everything." Rios nodded. "You're a free man. Officially alive again." Marcus stared out the window. The city skyline shimmered in the morning haze, rebuilt, relentless, indifferent. "Alive," he said quietly. "That's going to take some getting used to." A week later, the hospital discharged him. Reporters waited outside the entrance like vultures circling a battlefield. Microphones thrust forward, voices overlapping. "Mr. Leland, where have you been for the last 8 years? Did you fake your death intentionally? Are you a hero or an accomplice? Do you regret what you did?" Marcus paused at the top of the steps, cameras flashing. He looked older, grayer, but steadier, like a man who'd walked through the fire and found peace in the ashes. "I regret not telling the truth sooner," he said simply. "But I don't regret surviving." Then he walked away. That night, Marcus and Kara met one last time at the old Memorial Park, the same place where it had all begun again. The wreckage was gone, the grounds clean and quiet. His name was still engraved on the monument. "Going to have them take it off?" Kara asked. Marcus shook his head. "No. Let it stay. That man, the one who ran, who lied, he died that night in the flood. I'm someone else now. She smiled. Marcus Leland, reborn. He chuckled. More like Marcus Leland, reassembled with duct tape and moral panic. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft hum of traffic beyond the park. You could have disappeared again, Kara said eventually. Why come back? He thought about it, the patients he'd saved, the lies he'd told, the clinic in Haiti where he'd finally learned what redemption looked like when no one was watching. Because ghosts don't heal people, he said quietly. And I was tired of haunting my own life. A month later, Marcus appeared before a congressional committee investigating the fraud ring. Cameras lined the chamber. The nation watched as he told his story, every detail, from the first shipment of morphine to Ortega's manipulation, to the night he vanished in the floodwaters. His voice never wavered. When he finished, there was silence. Then applause, brief, hesitant, but real. A senator leaned into the microphone. Mr. Leland, what do you want now that the truth is out? Marcus looked down at his hands, the same hands that had pulled people back from death, that had stolen, forged, and healed in equal measure. I want to go back to work, he said. Not in a hospital. Not yet. Maybe a free clinic, maybe disaster zones again. The kind of places that don't ask who you were, only what you can do. The senator smiled faintly. I think that can be arranged. 2 months later, Haiti, 2025. The clinic buzzed with life again. Children ran barefoot between tents, and the smell of antiseptic mixed with salt air. Marcus moved from bed to bed, checking wounds, giving vaccines, laughing with patients who knew him only as Doc Mark. A radio played softly in the background, a news segment in Creole. Kara, now working as a volunteer administrator, translated for him with a grin. They're saying the U.S. has launched a new oversight committee for international medical aid, she said. Inspired by one Marcus Leland, RN. He shook his head, embarrassed. They really should pick a better role model. She laughed. Too late. That evening, as the sun dipped over the ocean, Marcus stood outside the clinic. The waves rolled in gently, rhythmic, forgiving. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the last remnant of his past, his old hospital ID badge, water-warped and faded. He looked at it for a long time. Then he smiled, and let it fall into the sea. Rest easy, ghost, he murmured. Behind him, Kara called out, You ready for the night shift, Doc? He turned, a faint spark of humor in his eyes. Always. And as the clinic lights flickered on one by one, Marcus Leland, the man who had drowned, lied, and risen, finally disappeared for the right reasons. Not as a fugitive. Not as a ghost. But as a man reborn in purpose.